Hey folks, in today's video, we're going to recap our archery elk hunt from September 2020. This was in Montana, public land, general tags. Mike is a resident and I had a non-resident general tag. As a resident, Mike also had deer tags, and this was the first year that I had the combo tag. So I had an elk tag and a deer tag. And in the units that we were hunting, my general tag was good for either species, either sex for deer, and either gender, either sex for elk. So if you spent some time archery elk hunting in September of 2020, you know it was a pretty unusual year for the rut, for elk activity. We had some really high temperatures. We had a lot of wildfires out west, so we're dealing with smoke and hazy conditions. It made it tough to hike, it made it tough to glass. The elk were nowhere near as vocal as we were hoping that they would be. We timed our hunt as strategically as possible. We really felt like we were going to be there at the peak of rut activity, that we were going to be hearing a lot of bugles. Unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. It made for some really tough hunting. Glassing was difficult, and as you know, if they're not making noise, it makes locating them a lot more difficult, especially if you can't glass them. So, we had an amazing hunt despite some of that adversity, and that's what makes hunting. That's what we love about these Western hunts. I mean, if they were easy, I don't think we would all love it the way that we do, right? And so, that's one of the cool things about every hunt is the unique set of challenges that we are faced with and that we are forced to overcome in order to be successful, right? Every hunt is a different type of challenge. And I think if they were all the same, again, we would get bored with it. So, our unique challenges here, at least early in the week, were the heat and the smoke. The first day, as we were hiking in, we heard a bugle still in the dark, right before, half hour before shooting light. So, as we were hiking up to this vantage point that we wanted to get to, we hear this. And so, we actually stopped and tried to hang out there until we had enough light, to call back and try to get something going. But by the time we had enough light, those elk had moved on. And so we spent the rest of that day up top looking for any kind of sign. We found tons of sign. We just couldn't turn up any elk. We saw a ton of moose. I think we counted the first 2 to 2.5 days. I think we saw 10 different moose. We had 5 of them were bulls. And man, the very first night, we had this incredible encounter with a moose. We had just zipped up our tents and we're getting ready to go to bed. And all of a sudden we heard this really just wild noise. And of course we hunt in grizzly country. So, when you zip up your tent, you're very aware that you're not the apex predator in the area. So we hear this just real guttural kind of moan coming from right outside our tents. And I call from my tent to Mike, and I'm like, Mike, you hear that? He's like, yeah. And you could tell in both of our voices, we're like, I don't know what the heck that is. And so the noise was kind of off to my right as I'm facing out, and Mike's tent is off to my left. And we both kind of unzip our tents, we kind of poke our heads out, and he's got big light, going this way. And there's a giant moose right in our camp. I mean, this thing was 20 yards away from our tents. And Mike is putting in for a moose tag in that unit, and I think he's got like 18 points. So whenever he draws that resident Montana moose tag, we know exactly where we're going and what moose we're looking for. So, man, that first day we just didn't see any elk. So the next day we pulled camp, moved to a new spot, and Mike had been going real hard through the summer and hadn't really had any days off. A lot of that was because of COVID, and so he was like, man, I don't know what time it was. We had camp set up. He's like, I'm just gonna take a nap, and we'll get up and we'll see what's happening. And he's like, if you hear something, wake me up. I'm like, okay. So I promise you, Mike had maybe been asleep for 5 minutes. He's got everything set up for sleep. He's got a sleep mask on, and I kid you not, just over the hill, I hear this bull starts kind of chuckling and making some noise, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I really don't want to wake Mike up, but that thing's making noise. We got to go get after it. So I'm like, Mike, yeah, they're bugling. All right, I'm up. So we get up and we bomb off the hill. We've got the wind in our favor, and we start working through, but nothing ever came. We heard a couple other bugles throughout that morning, but we just couldn't locate the elk, couldn't get close enough to them, and just couldn't make anything happen. Hunted that same spot on the evening of day 2. Didn't hear or see anything, and it was just really, really hot. Day 3, we woke up and we kind of did the same kind of plan and covered a little bit of different area in that different ground in that same area, and again, it was just so brutally hot, even by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and you just knew that they weren't going to be out and moving around. So we pulled camp and we moved to a different location that we had in our hunt plan, and it took us a decent part of the day to get there. And as we were on that travel route, we actually came across some mule deer, and it's public land, and they were fair game if we wanted to. And we just didn't do it. But it started to get me thinking, like, hey, I've been on a rifle elk hunt in 2019, didn't get anything. Came out in the spring of 2020 for a bear hunt, didn't get anything. This is now my 3rd hunt out here, and I haven't punched a tag. I'm tired of going home empty-handed. So, the idea of filling a mule deer or deer tag, if the opportunity presented itself, started to look real appealing, as opposed to eating tag soup again. So we get to our camp. On the way, we actually we drove past some grouse, and Mike did get one for us. So we've got a grouse in the back in the cooler, and that's going to be campfire dinner. We get camp set up, and we're in this really, really cool spot. Without giving away too much of the details, it's kind of this hole that it's not in a place that people don't go. It's just nobody goes down into this hole, and it's really close to an old burn or a recent burn, and we really liked it. It looked great, and we started working our way through it, kind of still hunting through the evening, and it's probably 5, 6 o'clock, and the winds were just crazy. They were constantly back and forth. I mean, one minute you'd see something drifting by this way, the next minute it would come back this way, and literally the wind was blowing every single direction. We just kind of, we decided to just sit still and not move. We didn't want to, have our scent going everywhere. So we figured we would just kind of wait it out, let the evening thermals kind of take over, and once that happened, we were going to make a plan. And as we did that, we just got surrounded by mule deer. We had them, to our left, we had them to our right, we had them down in front of us. And, I just looked at Mike and I was like, we're doing this? And he's like, yeah, man, do it. I've never killed a mule deer. So this was going to be my first mule deer. And as I just said, it was a chance to just finally fill a tag. And, so once we made that call and we had that discussion about, hey, are we cool with, hey, if we get a mule deer, like that's an evening of not hunting elk. So when we decided that that's what we were going to do, it was just fully committed, locked in, and had a great opportunity on this first deer. As you're seeing, we'll kind of try to blow this up and circle it so you can see the deer working through. But man, this deer was it was at 35 yards, and it was moving as I was facing it. It was moving left to right, and I needed that thing to take one more step, and I was going to have a perfect broadside shot as soon as it cleared this tree. Man, it just turned to its left and just started working down the hill. And you know, that's what happens, right? I mean, we've all been there, and you know, fortunately, you know, we were surrounded by them, so it wasn't like, you know, hey, that was our only shot. And you know, we had deer moving up off to Mike and camera right, and then there was, you know, some other ones, at least two other ones off to, you know, camera left and my left, and you know, this other one really started working its way in, and you know, so I get to full draw, and I'm just kind of waiting on it to present that shot opportunity. And we're not going to show you the entire. Well, what we'll do is we'll speed it up. We'll do some time lapse so you can see this. But you know, I was holding full draw. The video, the timestamp on the video is 2 minutes and 56 seconds. You know, one thing that you'll notice too is if you watch when I'm drawing, you know, there's a little bit of a glitch in that draw cycle on my bow, and this was something that, you know, when I traveled out, as soon as we get to camp for that first night, I pulled my bow out of the case and I wanted to shoot it and make sure it was good. And I don't really know, I still to this day don't know what happened, what was causing that glitch in the draw cycle, but it was very difficult to draw. You know, we did work through it. I shot a couple, and it was shooting well. It was just a really difficult draw cycle. And the weird thing is, when I got home from the hunt, after the hunt, pulled it out of the case, and nothing. There was like, it was like nothing had ever happened. So, you know, that was a really interesting thing to kind of be dealing with. And you know, like I said, I did shoot plenty of arrows at camp into a target, and I knew it was on. So, you know, I knew if I could get the bow back, that it was going to perform well. So, you know, holding it full draw. And again, this is something that I practiced throughout 2020 in my off season and in my prep and training, was holding at full draw for 30 seconds and then acquiring the target and then shooting, working that up to 45 seconds, a minute. I can't say I ever held for a full 3 minutes and shot in practice, but I do know that I was holding for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just being prepared for these types of scenarios. And I can't tell you how glad I am that I did that. And I think this is something that we talk about a ton at Fuel to Pursuit, and that is making our training harder than what we expect the real thing is going to be, so that when we get into these scenarios, we're prepared and we can handle this, right? And so actually in that first video of the 256 on the hold, you know, I just got to the point where I didn't think I could continue to hold at full draw and then be able to execute a great shot. So I actually let down, took a breath, kind of shook everything out, and then redrew. And so this, you know, kind of the video, Mike stopped one and then started the other. So, you know, you're not going to see the full hold and then right into the next shot. But, you know, this deer was just taking its time. It didn't know we were there, and it was just doing what deer do, and it was just slowly moving through. And so, you know, I held, I let it down, because like I said, I knew at that point I wasn't going to be able to execute the shot that I wanted to execute, you know, was able to redraw, and, you know, I had this perfect shooting lane, and the deer gave me that shot. And man, I'm so happy I put in the hours and the work and the prep and executed. And it was amazing. Really, really cool feeling to be able to, you know, share that with Mike, get it done, get my first mule deer, you know, finally punch a tag out west. You know, fortunately, we were maybe a mile from the truck and camp, if that. It was all uphill, as it always tends to be. But you know, it was not a long pack out, really, really short. Yeah, we were able to get back to camp, and we had an amazing feast. Like I said, Mike had already got a grouse that day. So, you know, because we were truck camping, we were kind of planning for a victory campfire feast. We had some morel mushrooms from earlier in the year. We had some butter, and we put this in cast iron skillet, and we had an amazing feast. We had some mule deer backstraps, some grouse, some heart and liver from the grouse as well. And man, you guys know there is nothing like the way you sleep in a tent at camp the night after a successful harvest and a great feast like that. And yeah, we really thank you for being here. Appreciate your support. Love being able to share this stuff with you guys. And we're looking forward to filming more hunts and bringing you a lot more stories and helping you guys, optimize your mental and physical performance, fuel your pursuit so that you can have more fun, more adventure. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click that like button, subscribe to our channel to see more of these videos that will be coming up. Click that notification bell so that you don't miss a single episode. And of course, leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Can't wait to hear from you.